Emma had always dreamed of her wedding day. The white dress, the flowers, the vows. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But life had other plans. 2 years ago, Emma lost her mother, Sarah, to a sudden illness. Sarah wasn't just her mom. She was her best friend, her confidant, and the person who taught her the true meaning of unconditional love. Sarah's golden retriever, Max, had been by her side through it all. When Sarah passed, Max became Emma's constant companion, a living reminder of her mother's love. But on the morning of Emma's wedding, something unexpected happened. Max refused to let go of her wedding dress. At first, Emma thought it was just a playful moment, but as she looked into Max's eyes, she realized there was something deeper going on. What was Max trying to tell her? And how would this moment change Emma's life forever? Let's dive into this emotional journey. Sarah adopted Max when he was just a tiny ball of golden fur. He had the softest ears, the most expressive brown eyes, and a playful energy that filled her quiet home with warmth. As a single mother, Sarah had always carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. But from the moment Max entered her life, everything felt a little easier. He became her constant companion, her shadow, following her wherever she went. From the kitchen where she baked cookies to the garden where she spent hours tending to her roses. Max wasn't just a pet. He was her confidant, her protector, her source of joy. On difficult days, when the loneliness crept in, Max would sense it. He would nuzzle against her, rest his head on her lap, and look up at her as if to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." Sarah often joked that Max understood her better than most people ever could. But then life took a cruel turn. One winter evening, Sarah sat Emma down with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "the doctors found something. That something was cancer." A word so small, yet it carried a weight heavy enough to shatter their entire world. As Sarah battled the disease, Max never left her side. He curled up beside her during chemotherapy sessions, his warm body pressed against her as if willing his strength into her fragile frame. When the treatments drained the color from her cheeks, he would nudge her hand with his wet nose, reminding her to eat. When the pain became unbearable, he would lie beside her, his steady breathing a comforting rhythm in the silence. Emma often watched them together, seeing the way Max seemed to understand her mother's every emotion. "He knows when I'm hurting," Sarah had once said, stroking his golden fur. "He's my little guardian angel." But even angels can't stop fate. The day Sarah passed away, Max sat by the window for hours waiting. His ears perked up at every sound, his tail wagged hopefully at every footstep. But she never came home. That night, Emma found him lying in Sarah's empty room, his head resting on her pillow. His eyes, usually so full of life, were dull and lost. Taking Max in was never a question. He was family. But no matter how much love Emma gave him, she could still see the longing in his eyes, the quiet ache for the woman who had loved him so deeply. Little did Emma know, Max's love for Sarah would one day lead to a moment that would change her life forever. Emma stood in front of the mirror, her hands gently smoothing over the delicate lace of her wedding dress. The reflection staring back at her was everything she had once dreamed of, elegant, poised, and ready to step into a new chapter of life. But as much as she tried to smile, there was a hollowness inside her. Her mother should have been here. Sarah had always imagined this day, helping Emma pick the perfect gown, adjusting her veil, standing by her side with tears of pride in her eyes. But instead, Emma had walked into the bridal boutique alone, forcing a smile as she ran her fingers over dresses she wished her mother could see. When she finally chose this gown, a classic white dress with soft floral embroidery, it wasn't just for her. It was for her mom. Sarah had always loved timeless beauty, and this dress felt like a piece of her. The bridal suite was filled with chatter and laughter. Her bridesmaids flitted around, adjusting their dresses, curling their hair, and sharing excited whispers about the ceremony. Someone popped open a bottle of champagne, the fizz filling the air with a quiet celebration. But amid the joy, Emma felt the weight of absence pressing down on her. She took a deep breath, blinking away the sting of tears. "Not today," she told herself. "Mom would want me to be happy." Just then, the door creaked open. A golden figure padded softly into the room. Max. He had been unusually quiet that morning. While he usually greeted Emma with excited tail wags and happy nudges, today he had kept his distance, watching her from the hallway with unreadable eyes. But now, as he stepped forward, his gaze locked onto Emma. "Max," one of the bridesmaids giggled. "Look at you, handsome boy. Are you here to see the bride?" Max didn't react to the light-hearted tone. He stood still, his ears slightly pulled back, his eyes deep and searching. Then slowly he walked toward Emma. "Hey, buddy," Emma murmured, kneeling down to scratch behind his ears. "You okay?" Max didn't wag his tail. Instead, he leaned forward and gently grabbed the hem of her dress between his teeth. At first, the room erupted in laughter. "Ah, he loves the dress," one of the bridesmaids cooed. "He doesn't want to let go." But Emma's smile faded as she looked at him more closely. Max wasn't playing. His grip wasn't the playful tug of a dog who wanted attention. It was firm, insistent. His eyes, usually so warm and full of life, held something different. Something deeper. "Max," Emma whispered, feeling her heartbeat quicken. Max let out a soft whimper, his body trembling slightly. His grip on the fabric tightened, just for a second, before he slowly released it and looked up at her, his eyes glistening. Emma's throat tightened. "No, this feels different," she murmured, barely noticing the puzzled expressions of her bridesmaids. "Look at him. He's not playing. He's trying to tell me something." The laughter in the room faded. Max took a small step back, but didn't break eye contact. The air felt heavier, as if the moment carried a meaning no one could quite grasp yet. Emma reached down, running her fingers gently through his fur. A lump formed in her throat. "What is it, buddy?" she whispered. Max let out a soft sigh, nudging her hand. And in that moment, Emma felt it. A pull in her heart, a quiet understanding that something bigger was happening. But what? And why did she feel like her mother was somehow part of it? The answer was coming, and it would change everything. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she knelt in front of Max, her hands shaking as they rested on his fur. The weight of something unspoken hung thick in the air. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "What is it, buddy? What are you trying to say?" Max let out a soft whimper, his warm brown eyes searching hers with an intensity that sent a shiver through her. He nudged her hand, his body pressing against her as if urging her to understand something. Something important. That's when she saw it. A small, delicate heart-shaped locket attached to Max's collar. Emma's breath hitched. She had never seen it before. How long had it been there? Who had put it there? With trembling hands, she reached for the locket, her fingers brushing over the cool metal. A lump formed in her throat as she slowly unlatched it. Inside, tucked neatly behind the glass, was a tiny photograph. Emma gasped. It was her mother. Sarah's warm, familiar smile looked back at her, frozen in time. And beneath the picture was a small, folded piece of paper. Emma's hands shook as she carefully unfolded it, her heart pounding against her ribs. The handwriting was unmistakable. "To my sweet Emma, on your wedding day. Love always, Mom." A sob escaped her lips as the realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. Her mother had known. She had known she wouldn't be there, but she had found a way to be. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she clutched the locket to her chest. The ache of her loss swelled inside her, but for the first time in years, it was mixed with something else, something warm, something comforting. Love. Max had carried this secret all along. He had waited for the right moment to show her, as if he had understood all along what this day meant, what she had been missing. Emma wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his golden fur. "You knew, didn't you?" she sobbed. "You knew she wanted to be here." Max licked her cheek softly, his tail wagging just once, gentle, reassuring. And in that moment, Emma felt it. Her mother was here. Not just in the locket, not just in the memories, but in everything. In the love that surrounded her, in the warmth of Max's embrace, in the unbreakable bond that even time couldn't erase. She looked down at the locket once more, holding it close. "Mom, you're here. You're really here." Emma blinked through her tears, pressing a kiss to Max's forehead. "Thank you, Max. Thank you for bringing her back to me." A soft breeze drifted through the open window, rustling the curtains. The sun cast a golden glow across the room, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt at peace. Her mother was with her. She had never really left. The music began to play, a soft, melodic tune that filled the air with warmth and emotion. The guests turned in their seats, their eyes glistening with anticipation. And then Emma stepped forward. She clutched the heart-shaped locket in her hand, her fingers gently tracing its edges. Her mother's love was wrapped around her, guiding her forward, step by step. Beside her, Max walked with quiet dignity, his golden fur shining in the afternoon light. His head was held high, his movements steady. He wasn't just a dog in this moment. He was her protector, her guardian, the silent thread between her past and her future. A soft murmur rippled through the crowd. Some guests wiped away tears, touched by the sight of Emma and Max walking together. The bond between them was undeniable, something deeper than words could capture. At the altar, Jake stood waiting, his eyes filled with emotion. As Emma reached him, he reached out, gently taking her hand. He glanced down at Max, then back at Emma, as if sensing the weight of everything she carried in her heart. The ceremony began, filled with heartfelt vows and quiet, meaningful glances. But when it was Emma's turn to speak, she did something unexpected. She turned toward the guests, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "Today isn't just about us," she said, her eyes scanning the faces before her. "It's about the love that never dies, the connections that last forever. And Max, he's the bridge between my past and my future." A hush fell over the crowd. Emma held up the locket, letting the sunlight catch the delicate metal. "My mother wanted to be here today, and in a way she is. She left me this locket, knowing that I would need her. And Max carried her message to me. He knew. He always knew." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she turned back to Jake. Love doesn't disappear. It doesn't fade. It stays with us in the people we cherish, in the memories we hold close, and sometimes in the most unexpected places. Jake reached up and wiped a stray tear from his cheek. His voice was thick with emotion as he whispered, "I always knew Max was special, but today he showed us all what love really means." The officiant smiled warmly, allowing a moment for the depth of the moment to settle. Then, with a gentle nod, he continued with the ceremony. When the final words were spoken, when Jake and Emma sealed their vows with a kiss, the crowd erupted into applause. And right in the middle of it all, Max wagged his tail, looking up at Emma as if he understood every single word. The past, the present, and the future had come together in this moment. And love, enduring, unbreakable love, had led them here. The wedding had been magical, a moment frozen in time where love, loss, and hope intertwined. But as the days passed and life settled into a new rhythm, Emma found herself stepping into an unfamiliar chapter. One filled with quiet moments, fresh beginnings, and the comforting presence of Max. She and Jake had moved into their new home, a cozy little house with warm wooden floors and soft golden light filtering through the windows. It wasn't just a place to live. It was a place to grow, to build, to remember. And Max was a part of it all. His favorite spot was right by the fireplace, where a small shelf held framed wedding photos, and in the center, the heart-shaped locket. It hung delicately on a hook, gently swaying whenever a breeze passed through the room. Emma would often catch Max staring at it, his eyes deep with something she could only describe as understanding. His ears perked, his expression thoughtful, as if he was remembering. "You miss her too, don't you?" Emma whispered one evening, kneeling beside him. Max let out a soft sigh, his tail thumping lightly against the floor. He nuzzled her hand, his warmth seeping into her palm like an unspoken promise. She stroked his fur, glancing up at the locket. "Mom always said love is eternal." The words echoed in her mind, wrapping around her heart. "And now, thanks to you, I know it's true," she murmured. "You're not just a dog, Max. You're family. You're my connection to her. And every time I look at you, I feel her love. It's still here. It's still with us." Max lifted his head and licked her cheek, as if sealing the truth between them. Love never truly dies. It lingers, woven into the spaces between laughter and tears, in the quiet moments and the echoes of memories. And in the presence of a loyal golden retriever, it lived on forever.